Green eyes, slumber eyes, and crystal eyes. This is the Power of God's Love podcast, episode 1006. Hey there, Tony here, and I hope this past week has gone better for you than fried okra and homemade mayonnaise. If you've never had that, you have missed out. Let me tell you that right now. I'm going to jump in here right now and talk about a clear, cool morning about 3 years ago. Or wait. Maybe it was 3 years from now. I suppose it doesn't matter. The point is, little Ivantu woke up before sunrise and saw beautiful colors swirling around his room in glass bubbles. There were thousands of these little orbs, and every few seconds, one would smash into the wall and burst, and tiny shards of light would fade away into the air like fog in sunlight. Little Ivantu rubbed his eyes and looked again, but the swirling orbs didn't disappear. In fact, there were more than ever, and many more of them crashed into the wall with a flash of light, and then they faded away. What's all this? He wondered. Am I still asleep? Am I dreaming? Yeah, that's what it's got to be. But just then, a voice in the center of the swirling colors whispered, "Do you want to see more?" Little Ivantu pulled the covers up to the bottom of his nose, but he couldn't, no, he didn't dare look away. Yes. Yes, I do. Well then, hold out your right hand, the voice commanded. And Ivantu did as he was told. One of the swirling orbs almost instantly flew over the bed. And it hovered and rotated just above Ivantu's little outstretched hand. "Look closely," the voice whispered. Ivantu pulled his hand toward his face and the orb followed. He looked deeply into the clear crystal circle and saw a tiny boy running. So he squinted his eyes and he could see that the little boy was chasing something. What was it? He couldn't quite make it out. It was pretty and had a nice form, but he just couldn't tell what it was. "Look deeper," the voice whispered a bit louder. And as he did, Ivantu could see the boy was him. And whatever it was he was chasing started to come into focus and take form. With each second, it was a little more beautiful. Little Ivantu could feel a sense of joy wash over him. It was all beginning to make sense, and joy filled his heart. As it did, the tiny version of him dived forward and wrapped both arms around the beautiful bubble. And it burst into thousands of light crystals that floated into Ivantu's eyes, and he fell back asleep. When he woke up before sunrise the next morning, he remembered, and he shimmied out of bed, found his notepaper, and scribbled down 5 words, and he kept that piece of paper with him for the rest of his life. Those 5 words changed his life forever. And you know what? I'm going to let you guess what those 5 words were. In fact, you can send me suggestions of what you think they should be, those 5 words that he wrote down and kept with him for the rest of his life. Given that story, what would be the 5 words you would say he would write down? Let me know. Send me an email at tony@tonyfunderburk.com, and I'll read every one of them that come in. And if yours is the one that I think is the best, I'll even read it on another episode of the podcast. And right now I'm going to get back to some restful sleep talk, because slumbering, even though it sounds silly, it's a good thing for you. It's a good thing to do. Restful sleep is required for you to be healthy. Deep sleep and healthy breathing are essential for you to have a good, healthy life. Pretty simple, right? So why do so many people have to have such a hard time at night? Why don't you get plenty of restful sleep? I can say that I don't, and I know why. I have several reasons, and I know what they are. And you can hear and you can watch 1,000 different naturopaths and functional medicine practitioners and standard Western medicine doctors, and you might get 1,000 different answers to that question of why don't you get plenty of restful sleep? Or at least 1,000 different variations of reasons, but here's the one thing they all have in common. Not one of them knows why you don't get plenty of restful sleep. Not one. Oh, sure, they can make educated guesses, and they might guess right. but they won't know until after they make the guess and run some tests and follow up with you. And here's why. Because you are an individual. Yes, you were made in the image and likeness of God, just like every other human being, but you are uniquely you. You might have a lot on your mind, or you might have some sort of genetic predisposition to certain sleep patterns, and you could even be dealing with a health issue. There are lots of reasons why people don't get as much sleep as they should. One night, about 11 years ago, I had a mind filled with ideas, and those ideas apparently affected my dreams. Then, one of the dreams woke me up, and I wrote a story about it. It starts out, Cato cruised Clear Creek in his canoe. I love alliteration, so I love how I started that. Anyway, his mind was filled with ideas and dreams, so he didn't look back. What was behind was gone, and he didn't even want the memories. So, he pointed his bow toward the horizons above the tall pines and rode toward the future. Freedom is ahead, he thought to himself. With freedom, I can try out my ideas and chase my dreams, and maybe even sleep well again. It was true, Cato hadn't slept well in months. Even when he could remember the soft sounds of his mama's voice reading his favorite stories or singing lullaby songs, he just couldn't fall fast asleep because his eyes just wouldn't close. There were too many dangers in his life. Cato was much stronger than other 10-year-old boys, and he could work all day on a couple of bowls of potato soup and a cup of cold coffee. That was all the food he got each day from the slavers. But he stayed strong in his mind, and that helped him stay strong in his body. He knew one day he'd find a way out. That day was this day. The night guard had fallen asleep in his chair by the front door to the cabins, so Cato slipped out the back window. He made his way through the dark forest to the creek, because that's where he had hidden his hand-carved canoe under deadwood logs. With the silence of a butterfly, he had slipped the canoe and its one small oar into the creek. Then he made himself as flat and still as possible, and he let the currents of the creek sweep him away. Safely out of anyone's view, Cato sat up and paddled with all his might, and as the sun rose above the treetops, so did the hope in his heart. Sunbeams darted through the tree limbs like tiny elves, so Cato decided to drift downstream in the shade. He leaned back on his elbows and took a deep, long breath of fresh morning air. Ah, the scents of the forest, the dampness of the dew, and the smoke from someone's fire. Way better than all the sweaty cabin odors he had suffered in for 2 years. Then, like his canoe, Cato's thoughts drifted. Gently, he floated further and further back to a better time. A time when he lived with his parents, his sister, and his brother in a much happier cabin, and he could almost smell a big black pot of beans his mama cooked in the fireplace. And some fried potatoes and cornbread baked in bacon grease. Man, that was living, and he couldn't wait to get back there. Cato remembered his papa reading out of a worn-out, hand-me-down Bible. One of his favorite verses was about hope. How did that go? It was something like, I get up before sunrise and cry for help. I hope in your word, God. He knew he didn't remember it the same way Papa read it, but he was sure it went something like that. Hope. Couldn't never let that die. Especially since Papa said hope is always near because God is always near. Near as your very next breath. Cato heard himself breathe, and that meant God must be very close. So freedom must be very close too. Then he heard dogs barking somewhere in the distance. Oh no, the slavers must be chasing him after all. So Cato jumped up, grabbed his oar, and started paddling with all his strength. Luckily, the current was faster in this part of the creek, so his canoe felt like a motorboat. In fact, he was suddenly aware of more rocks and more waves. Uh-oh, there were some rapids not too far ahead. Imagine how you'd feel if you were in a little homemade canoe. And imagine crashing through rough water filled with big, jagged rocks. Cato wasn't sure his little boat could take the beating of the waves, but he was sure it was certain doom if he hit any of those rocks. Suddenly, Cato couldn't hear the dogs or smell the air or remember the past. He could only hear the pounding of his heart. He could only smell the water splashing in his face. and he could only think about staying alive. So he frantically slapped his oar in the water, first on the left side, then on the right. Then he used the oar to keep from hitting a rock. Then he smacked the oar back in the water, again on the left, then on the right, and back and forth, and pow! Cato didn't see the limb hanging low above the water, and it smacked him right in the shoulder and knocked him out of his canoe. The water splashed over him, and he swallowed a big mouthful, but he managed to somehow keep his head above water. He caught a quick glimpse of his canoe just as it slammed into a big rock in the middle of the creek. It busted into pieces and floated away downstream ahead of him. The waves of rushing water were getting even bigger. The noise drowned out everything else, and Cato's arms began to feel like lead weights. Not sure how much longer I can swim, he thought. I'll never see you again, Mama and Papa. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. All at once, it felt like the whole world fell out from under him. Cato kept paddling his arms, but there didn't seem to be any water to swim in. Without knowing, he had tumbled over a waterfall. It was only 2 or 3 seconds, but everything went into slow motion. Cato could see a deep pool of clear water below as he fell, and he hoped he wouldn't hit a rock. With a splash and a plunk, Cato hit the pool and sank deep into the sparkling clear water. He opened his eyes and he saw the image of his mama's face floating in the millions of bubbles, and he reached for her and he started to call her, but his mouth filled up with water. For some reason, he wasn't scared. In fact, he felt very calm. Then he remembered another Bible verse his papa read that said, "Be still and know that I am God." Cato relaxed, and he fell into a deep, restful sleep. All the bright and beautiful colors of the world danced before his eyes, like carnival characters. He wasn't thinking of where he had been, and he wasn't afraid of where he was going. He just knew somehow it was all going to be all right. And the next time he opened his eyes, Cato was sure he was in heaven. Before he could even see, he smelled cornbread, and it smelled just like Mama's. He opened his mouth to ask where he was, and a soft finger touched his lips. Then a face stooped over in front of him. He still couldn't see very well, but it looked a little like a woman's face. She must be an angel to welcome him into heaven. "Where am I?" Cato gurgled. "Shh. Lie still, Cato," the voice answered. "You're safe now. Your mama's here, and you're going to be just fine." "Mama! Mom!" Cato blurted out. "Is it really you?" "Yes, dear. You're home, and we're going to make sure you stay." "But how did I get here?" Cato asked. "I thought I drowned." "No, sweetie, your papa found you by the creek, and you nearly drowned, but he found you in time. See, we never gave up on finding you, and we knew if there was ever any way for you to make it home, it would be on Clear Creek. So your papa was there almost every day watching for you. It was a miracle, plain and simple. Yep, it must have been a miracle, but whatever it was, Cato was thrilled to be home. And in that moment, the still small voice of God rose up in his mind, saying, "Now may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, that you may abound in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." And as Cato heard those words in his heart, his mama hugged him close against her breast and sang, "Yes, my love, I do adore you. Hear my heart, it's beating for you. Private memories we will keep, but for now, fall fast asleep. Leave the world and cares behind you. I'll make sure they cannot find you. You'll be safe in slumber deep. So for now, fall fast asleep."
Close your eyes, it's so delightful. When you do, you'll take the leap, and you'll see you'll fall fast asleep. Fall fast asleep, I'll sing to you, and I will keep you near. Fall fast asleep, and when you wake, you'll find me waiting here. Asleep, I'll sing to you, and I will keep you near. Fall fast asleep, and when you wake, you'll find me waiting here. Fall fast asleep, I'll sing to you, and I will keep you near. Fall fast asleep, and when you wake, you'll find me waiting here. Fall fast asleep, I'll sing to you, and I will keep you near. Fall fast asleep, and when you wake, you'll find me waiting here.
Well, I hope you enjoyed Cato's story and, of course, the happy ending. And I hope you enjoyed the song, Fall Fast Asleep. That's actually one of the songs off my Lullaby collection. And that's a collection of jazzy-sounding lullabies for kids of all ages, mostly young kids, but grown-ups love it too. And by the way, you can download that book and get all the songs that go along with it for free in a download inside the book in a secret link. All you have to do is go to tonyfunderburk.com/books, and you'll find the Lullaby book offering in there. I hope you'll go there and look for it today. Your kids will love you for it, or your grandkids. Remember that the Power of God's Love podcast is always brought to you by tonyfunderburk.com. And if you don't get a book, at least go over there and sign up for the free newsletter called The Truth, and you'll get access to all kinds of stuff that you won't find anywhere else, brightly dividing the word of truth and helping you to remember the power of God's love.